conversation we call Z Roundtable. Always here, always number 6, Anyete Street here in East Legon, Accra, Z101.9 FM. What are we discussing today? So, picture this. Imagine a Ghana where economic prosperity, social justice, and environmental sustainability strive. Imagine a Ghana where every citizen has access to quality education, healthcare, and opportunities for growth. Z Roundtable will be exploring the country's ambitious Vision 2057 development plan. Vision 2057 is more than a dream. It's a roadmap to transform Ghana into a high-income economy, if I may say, driven by innovation, technology, and human capital. The National Development Planning Commission has recently outdoored a 32-year long-term national development perspective framework to guide development of all sectors of the country. To be known as Ghana Vision 2057, it comes as a framework, and unlike plans which are associated with rigidities, gives flexibility to the government in power to rely on its unique development concepts and persuasion to achieve the targets within a stipulated time. So over the next 2 hours or more, we'll be delving into the key pillars of this visionary plan, discussing economic transformation and industrialization, human capital development, and education reform. We'll be touching on infrastructure expansion and urban planning, environmental sustainability, climate action, governance, institutional strengthening, etc., etc. So the guests are seated. Dr. Edward Brown, Senior Director, Research Policy and Programs, Africa Center for Economic Transformation, is here with us. Also, Richard Kwinibu-Akodia is Director, Research and Innovation Division, National Development Planning Commission. He is also here. Vision 2057, Ghana's course for a brighter future. Gentlemen, welcome to ZFM.
Thank you very much.
Welcome so much. We're excited to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Vision 2057. Vision. First of all, is it necessary? We're going, 4 years, manifesto.
Okay.
We're going somewhere.
Yeah.
Why the need for a Vision 2057?
Right. It's very important that we have a vision, because that is the essence of development and growth. And it gives you direction.
Okay.
Where are you going? That is a very important question that every human being, every institution as an entity needs to ask itself. Because once you start your journey of life, whether you're a person or an institution, you need to have that horizon ahead of you. Where are you going, and what is it that you want to get when you get to that destination? So that perspective of your destination is very, very important, and that is the where the word vision comes from. So it's important that we know where we are going, and that will help us to know what we need to do now, what we need to do tomorrow, so that it will take us to that destination. So
that's interesting, but I was going to ask that since 92, where were we going?
Yes, so that, and if you look at the 1992 Constitution, clearly indicated that we want a society that has freedom, justice, but in all this, it should also give us a sense of where, or as an individual, as a country, where the liberties and the development aspirations of everybody is adhered to. And so the Constitution makes provision for some of these things that we need in life: economic, social, environmental issues, governance structures that will enable us to get to our destination and to satisfy every Ghanaian, if I could put it. And so whilst we look for the final destination that for us as a nation we've carved for ourselves, the journey requires that we need to manage our living.
Dr. Brown, need for Vision 2057? Mm-hmm. Is there a need?
Let me first draw an analogy with sports. If you are running 100 meter, you know where you're getting to. What is 100 meters? That's where we go.
Exactly.
Everybody knows it's 100 meters. And there are indicators to define success. So if you don't plan you fail to plan. So the vision offers us a direction of travel. Where do we want to be, say, in 25 years? You know, next year, with the new elections, there's going to be a new government. And we'll be entering the second quarter of the 21st century, right? Second quarter of the 21st century. Where do we want to be 25 years from now, or 32 years from now, when Ghana will be 100 years? That there has to be some kind of a broad consensus around that objective, the Ghana we want at that time. So the importance of the vision is to coalesce understanding around a common direction. How you get there may differ. If you're playing football, we all know, the spectators, they know that you want to score the goal.
Exactly.
And if you don't score the goal,
you're not winning the match.
You're not winning the match. So your objective, your primary objective, is to constantly drive through the maze of opportunities and challenges to get to the goal. So you have a single objective to score. And now we also have even more sharper ways of knowing whether you scored or not, right?
Yeah, VAR.
The VAR. By the same token, the Vision 2057 offers us an opportunity to agree on broad objectives of where we want to be. We want to be a prosperous country with a GDP at this level. We want a country that has transformed and has uplifted everyone. Maybe not all boats at the same level, but at least has transformed to provide a living wage to everyone, to provide opportunities for jobs, to increase our welfare, to enhance women's participation. These are key drivers of transformation. And if you don't have that consensus or convergence around those issues, then every 4 years you have a plan and somebody comes and does something else. Are those 4-year plans all moving towards that goal? How you get there may differ from party to party, but you want to get there. And we agree that's where we want to be.
Before we go into the nitty-gritties and the objectives and all that of the plan, there are some that are very pessimistic about this plan. Recently, we brought it up somewhere in a conversation, and people gave us history and said, listen, somebody came, he did one, why should this one be a big deal? It looked like the average Ghanaian really couldn't be bothered. Although you are saying they should be, are those that are pessimistic about this plan, would you understand where they are coming from?
Yes, and partly sometimes it's also information flow. Because ever since, and if we can just trace it from 1992 when the Constitution came into being, and that is where institutions like the National Development Planning Commission was set up to manage our development path. Of course, it had a previous history of how the commission was set up, but when the Constitution was brought into being, the commission is the institution that was charged with the responsibility of advising the president and parliament upon request, but also on its own volition, development planning and strategy. And so the earlier question you asked, is it necessary that we should have a vision? Yes, it has always been necessary. This institution is charged with the responsibility of providing that horizon of where, as a nation, we need to be and how we can get there. So periodically, every 4 years from 1992 coming, we have prepared medium-term development plans. But it is always important to look in the longer horizon, a long term. And so 1992, by 1996, as a nation, we had decided that we wanted something that looks more in the long term. And so we came out, led by the National Development Planning Commission, with a popular document that I'm sure most Ghanaians know, Vision 2020.
Yes.
And that was supposed to span a 25-year period from 1996 thereabout through to 2020, but to be implemented over a 4-year cycle. So we did the first step, 1996 to 2000. And then from 2000, we rolled over the next step, which by some design of policy and exigencies at the time, we needed to also shift focus a little bit, because at the time, from 2000 onwards, most developing economies were looking at the poverty reduction strategies. Why? Because at the time, a lot of countries, especially in Africa, were struggling, poverty issues, inequality issues, and we needed to have a grip on poverty reduction programs and all that.
So in other words, although there was a plan, sorry to cut you, it was shelved for pragmatic reasons.
Shelf may be a very strong word, but as you plan, because for instance, we sit here, we are sitting 2024, but we are looking into 2057. You don't exactly know what will happen even in 2030. Okay. And so as you plan and make provisions for what you want to see in 2030, 2045, 2057, you also accommodate emerging issues. And as they become relevant for intervention and you need to address them, then you bring them on board. And so the emphasis I'm making here is that poverty reduction became an issue in 2020 and needed to be factored in our development planning. So with growth, yes, and so as you reduce poverty, you focus on poverty reduction, it is also important to get a driver. And so if you look at the history from 2005, 2006 going, we also started looking more into growth. But we know growth doesn't end it. Growth may move some people, some entities, some opportunities will be available to some other people, but others that may not be able to take advantage of the growth need to be brought on board. And so you do both.
Okay.
So in 2006 upwards, not only did we focus on poverty reduction, but we also focused on growth. So the point I'm making here is that once you do the long-term perspective, there are some specific interventions that need to be taken across our national life. And we mentioned economic development issues. We've mentioned social development issues. And today we will go into the specifics.
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Environmental issues. And as I'm mentioning these pillars, you see them all over. Economic, how are businesses doing? Social, our education and health issues, governance, even making this presentation available to Ghanaians so that they become more knowledgeable on what we are doing as a nation and be able to contribute. Even the leaders may not have the answers or all of the answers. And so sometimes you need to bring citizens into view and pick their contributions, pick their views so that they own the process. So that it's not said that, oh, there's this Vision 2057. It is a few people who have sat somewhere to prepare it, develop it, and that we are not part of it.
I was actually...
We will go into
because some
all
have
that.
said that who developed it? Few people went to sit somewhere and developed it. Doc, let me find out from you, Dr. Brown. Having been around for a while, does this country, based on successive governments and what they've done, does it look like they are working according to a plan like Richard just said? Does it look like there is a grand plan they are working? Doesn't it look like, which is what the average Ghanaian on the street thinks, that they are working according to their own manifestos, and when this one comes, he throws this one starts. Doesn't it, or I'm mistaken in my thinking?
No, I think you're absolutely right that there is the perception, and actually it's also a reality, that each, succeeding government develops another plan. That's what I'm saying. And therefore it jettisons what has been previously developed. Now, the question about whether the plan prepared by NDPC has been developed through a collective engagement with the key stakeholders in community, I think it has in many ways. But part of the challenge lies in the fact that if you look at the constitutional provision, that each government that comes must prepare within 2 years what is it called? I think it has a very long
coordinated
program of social development. Now, but it also says as much as possible to build on what the previous plans have undertaken. But many times, like you rightly said, the manifestos override, and therefore much of what they're trying to do is focused on their manifestos. So the issue of a common vision is not really there. And I think this is where this new plan is hoping to provide a framework. It's not prescriptive about how you get there, but it is much more of finding a common ground on how you get to the vision you want, what we want. You see what I'm saying?
I get it.
So in 2057, we would want to, Ghana wants to be, say, for example, an upper middle income country with a per capita income of X and so on. And we want to have a lot more, formal sector employment, a living wage, all those things that everybody aspires to globally. So you have that direction. Now, how you get there, NDPC, through its process of engaging citizens, have put together perhaps a much more flexible, planning structure, which allows each government to come and take and build on what the other has done, but continue to follow that trajectory. Now, the key issue is, the government must be accountable to those plans. They must follow those plans, and citizens must also be able to see that they are doing that. And many often than not, you see that when you ask an ordinary person, you say, well, this government comes, it stops the projects that you're doing. If you take a helicopter view of the country and you look at the uncompleted school buildings and hospitals and whatever, roads even that have been stopped and so on. I think this is where the challenge is. And that is why this plan offers an opportunity to see whether or not what the government is doing is aligned with the long-term objective, and to hold government accountable to doing that.
Dr. Brown, thank you very much. We will still go into, I'm sorry if I'm a bit interested in it before we even go into the meat of it, but let's still go around it a bit before we open it up. Richard, why would this one work?
Okay.
Since we've had some that, why would this one work?
Maybe I would add value by saying, why would it work better? Because the previous ones,
that's a better way of putting it.
The previous ones have also made positive contributions anyway. Of course, there's still room for improvement, and the commission, through its processes, realized that there was something, and I want to refer to the constitutional provisions that have been made, and that says Article 36(5), the president upon assuming office, and a lot of provisions are reserved in the bosom of the president, and so a lot of things are expected of the president. So it says upon assuming office, within 2 years in office, you need to come with the coordinated program of economic and social development policies. It's a constitutional injunction. And since 1992, no president has faltered on that. So it's something that is very, very important. And the commission also respects that view very much. Now, just even before you get to that provision, 6.5, there's 35.7, which also, based on the directive principles of state policy, also says that as much as practicable, coming governments or certain governments should try and implement programs from previous governments. And I'm trying to link this to the motto of the National Development Planning Commission, which says, together we build. Okay. And so there is the need to look back. What is it that we are doing? which of them are working, which of them are not working, so that when a new president comes into office, you just don't throw away whatever is there. You look at what is working and build on it. And so in some areas, we may not have done well because there are certain things that may be working, but for some reasons they are not continued. And that is where the voice of Ghanaians have become so loud these days, that if you don't do these things, we will get you out of office. And so the politicians, certain presidents, certain governments, future governments have all now become very much aware that we need to work together. So in this particular document, and we have all agreed as a nation that we need to see the direction that we are going. What is it that Ghanaians need? The Ghana we want, the future that we want. We should provide that direction. And then the Commission should also help through consensus building, consultative processes to also determine the broad policy goals, objectives, even the strategic direction. What is it that we need to consider? But then the specific interventions that a future government will put in place, we have reserved that. Why? Because the Constitution says, bring your coordinated program. The word coordinated, very important here. It's just not a lifting, but it should sit well, if you like, put it like integrated, should sit well with what is already being done, so that, as he pointed out, if there is infrastructure development having to do with health, having to do with education, energy and all that, you just don't abandon it just because a previous government did it. And so we leave that space, and we have carefully considered that and also consulted that to be consistent with the constitutional provision, unless we make amends. And as we speak, there are some considerations of amending the Constitution. I don't know whether that is a primary candidate for review. But as much as the Constitution remains, then we need to respect that view by allowing that space for future governments to be able to introduce, if necessary, their program. Once again, another view that consolidates this is the multi-party democratic system that we have carved for ourselves. And I think Ghana has done so well over the period, which allows parties, the political parties, I should say, whether independent or, within a political space, partisan political space, to prepare manifestos. Now, the manifesto provides opportunity for these governments in waiting to sell their idea. And these ideas revolve around programs, actions, interventions, and projects. So that as they debate, as they campaign, and speak to the electorate, the huge assumption that is made by everyone is that you come into office because you sold your idea to people and then they bought into it. Majority. Not entirely that everybody said this is what we want, but majority. And since we are using majority rule, when you come into office, that opportunity should be given to you. And that is the coordinated program. So the long-term vision is provided with broad strategic direction, essentially coming out of research that has been done. And of course, you shouldn't be surprised. You shouldn't be surprised I'm coming from the research and innovation.
You are the head of research.
Right? Not just research, but also innovation. There are certain things that have been researched into, but we noticed that they were not working. And so what innovation are we bringing on board? New ways of doing things that generate positive results so that we can consider this. So an entity may contemplate on something, but if the research is not pointing to its efficacy and benefit, then we don't necessarily have to buy into it. So although
I get it.
Just a small point. Although the manifestos are seen as the marketing tool to sell the political parties and all that to go into elections, when you come into office, it is not just the manifesto you are coming to implement. The Constitution says you should do a coordinated program. So it will be a blend of what is said in one manifesto, the other, and all. And because the opportunity exists for the government to consult during that process, and it was not for any reason that the Constitution says within 2 years. You could do it in 6 months, you could do it in 3 months, but within 2 years, come out with this program. And this program has to be consistent with previous interventions. Of course, if the thing wasn't working, Ghanaians may not even allow, because now we have a voice, you to do it. So we've created that space, and that is one of the new things in this vision document, so that together we can look at what the new government wants to bring on board, interrogate it, and see whether they will point us to the direction that Ghanaians have said that they want to see. And we'll go through all these
now, Doc,
social, economic, environment, and government.
Now I'm even more confused.
Yes.
I'm more confused now than we started the program. Yes. I'm going to tell you I'm confused. So the successive governments that came, they all brought their coordinated plans.
Program, yes.
Their programs. Yeah. Where did they get it from? Based on their manifestos.
Essentially.
Did their manifestos sit with their visions at the time?
Yes. Let me say this. Because the planning processes that we have in this country is essentially consultative, but of course also backed by analytical work. We consult broadly at the sector level, which is the ministries, departments, and agencies, at the district level, which is the metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, and also private sector, civil society. The commission has a process called the cross-sectoral planning group. It's an embodiment of all the different facets of our national life. So we bring into being the youth, the aged, the even...
Has Doc been to one of those events?
Several, and he will share some experiences. He will share some experiences with you. In fact, for this particular period, this vision that has...
There's this new one, the 57?
Not only were civil society institutions, think tanks, and all that involved, but civil society led by ASSET took a bold step to also provide another, call it pathway, to give emphasis to certain critical areas of our national life, and broadly consulted to come out with what we call the Ghana Compact. Ghana Compact because it's an more or less a consensus or an agreement between the citizens and our leaders that when you come into office, be watchful about these things. There are about 7, 8, or 9 areas that they have emphasized, and Dr. Brown will share light on it. The commission provided input into that, and Ghanaians, in fact, it was launched not long ago, very broad framework, but also with the necessary, call it accountability framework that will ensure that they comply. But the point I wanted to emphasize is that yes, the political parties have been with us all this while. They consult the commission. Most of them are even part of the commission's processes, so they know. And when we were doing the 40-year development planning framework in between 2015 to 2018, and look at it, it took us almost 3 years to complete the
This
process.
took how long?
This one has taken us roughly 2 years because we also wanted it to be engaging. We did a summit because a lot of the information were existent. In fact, there was the need for this beyond the fact that we wanted to create space for this political thing, was also to look at the provisions that were made or the proposals that were made in the 2018 version of the 40-year plan at the time, because it would have taken us 40 years to get to 2057, was the coming, or what the COVID that happened. It really shook the foundations of the fundamentals of the country, and there were certain targets that we saw we were already missing, and our analysis were pointing to the fact that we needed to review. So we consulted heavily on the 40-year development framework and made provisions for some of the things that had not been anticipated. We didn't know COVID was coming, and one key area is emergency preparedness that has been introduced in there. Just to make the point that it has to be always consultative and no stakeholder is left behind. Primary, secondary, tertiary stakeholders are all brought on board. So as we speak, the document is out there in the public, the politicians, the political
Vision
parties.
2057
is out there. We've consulted political parties, they have it, and they are using it in their own strides, how they can respond to the broad development goals and targets.
Dr. Brown, we have cause to be excited about this vision.
Yes, but the devil is in the implementation, right? And I think the point you made about, Richard has given us what is expected to be the situation. But the reality on the ground reflects otherwise, isn't it? In the sense that the consolidated program of each government draws from the manifesto and also tries to draw from the plan. But then implementation is never done. As I said earlier, if you look at infrastructure, each government comes and repeats the same thing the other has done, leaving abandoned structures. So it goes beyond just the development of the long-term plan and vision. It goes to the way the political economy and political settlement situation is done in the country. And therefore there's a need, and that's why I think Richard was mentioning what ASSET and a group of other think tanks, about 7 of them, and other stakeholder groups, NITRITE, NCCI, and all that, are part of this process with NDPC, IDEG, CDD, Imani, IFS, so many of these. We've come together over the last 24 months to engage more broadly on critical issues that we think are important to drive the country's economic transformation, and to have a common framework which governs the assessment of results. Like the VAR, we want to agree on broad framework that we can hold government accountable to. And this has gone through a long process of consultation.
So the Ghana Compact is coming from the vision?
Yes, the Ghana Compact is helping to promote the vision.
Okay.
Okay, and align the stakeholders' views with the broad framework of the vision. And I think about a month ago, there was what you call the convention, Citizens Convention, which brought together about 500 participants from different stakeholder groups, including political parties and so on, to have a declaration. And the declaration points to a number of key issues which we think are binding constraints to economic transformation in Ghana. And therefore, governments must be held accountable to that. The Compact team has been having engagements with the various political parties, at least the 2 main political parties, to see the extent to which their manifestos, first of all, are aligned to the vision and also aligned to the Compact declarations. And now to develop what you call accountability mechanism that would allow citizens to hold the government, any government that comes into power, accountable for those key items. And if you go to the Ghana Compact website, you see the declaration and everything is there. It has undergone very wide consultations, across the countries, throughout the regions and districts, and the key stakeholders, civil society organizations and so on, have all been part of it. And the press in particular, the media, has been very active, association of media industry and so on, are part of this process and have made declarations and their commitment to support that. So, given the fact that over the last 20, 30 years, the 1992 Constitution provides some broad framework, but again, you can see that implementation has been poor because each government comes and tries to do something of its own. they may be aligned, but they're not implemented, you know. And abandonment of, I mean, programs and policies, the policy inconsistency has been a major problem. And that is why the compact, the Ghana Compact for Political and Economic Transformation is important to help citizens to hold government accountable to the various elements that have been agreed to in the compact.
Interesting. Now I'm becoming excited about it now.
Okay, thank God.
So now, so now let's go into
okay.
the nitty-gritties themselves.
Okay.
I think the first big one will be economic transformation.
Definitely.
The first big one. I mean, economic transformation is a no-go. We cannot run away from that.
Yeah.
What does the vision say?
Okay. So let's start with the broad goal.
Okay.
Okay.
Where are we going?
Okay. So
it is the where are we going question, right?
Yeah.
Ghana towards 2057.
And let me try to be exact here. So we say that we want a free, just, prosperous, and self-reliant nation. To repeat.
Yes.
A free, just, prosperous, and self-reliant nation, which secures the welfare and happiness of citizens while playing a leading role in international affairs.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
That's very nice.
So let's start. Let's pick it one by one. Free.
A free.
So in my mind, judiciary issues.
Okay.
Free and fair.
Yes.
The rich won't pay and then I'll be jailed even when I'm innocent.
Okay.
Okay. Fair. Equitably, I am dealt with equitably even if I am not the richest guy in the area. Everybody, you know, we're equal before the law.
Yes.
And that was the other one.
So just and free also connotes like your ability to access several other things.
Then nobody will prevent me.
You from engaging and all that. Okay?
Nice.
Good.
Just.
And just. So that's the
That's the issues of legalities and all.
If anybody, infringes on your right, there is a system in place to ensure that you get justice.
Nobody's going to bully me.
No.
Because I'm a Ghanaian.
No.
In my own country.
Wonderful.
The next one.
Now your favorite. Prosperous.
Economy issues. I should have money in my pocket. I mean,
but once you are born, at least there should be some comfort to you that you would prosper.
As a Ghanaian.
As a Ghanaian.
Now that is exciting.
It should be exciting.
Doc, is it not?
Yeah, it's exciting. The question is
implementation.
How do you translate these laudable objectives and ambitions into actionable items that you can hold governments accountable to? And if I may come there briefly, you see, I think, when we talk about economic transformation, I'm pretty sure, the audience listening would have their own definition of economic transformation. It's like the elephant. When you look at the elephant, depending on where you stand, what you hold, you say, okay, it has a big trunk. It has.
So it's a snake.
So there are
if you touch it from the side, it's a wall.
Yes. There are several parts of it. And until you know the full picture and to see how you can actually create that picture of the elephant by understanding what the key elements of it is and having a common understanding around it, then you have a problem. And I think that the problem with economic transformation is that there are too many interpretation of it, to the extent that people are looking at the ear of the elephant or the tail or whatever it is. But from assets perspective, we have done in-depth analysis over the last decade to come up with what we call the African Transformation Index, where we're talking about growth, right? But we know that growth, economic growth, is not enough because over the last 2 decades, we say in Africa is rising. In fact, 6 out of the 10 best performing
are on the continent.
Yes, are on the continent. But still, are we creating jobs? Are we improving welfare? Are income levels rising? And when there's a shock, immediately everything drops. Growth buckles completely.
Exactly.
And it takes a long time to come
for us
back.
to come up again.
So for us, economic transformation means more than growth. And just again, I'm drawing the analogy with football, is that you need a VAR, you need a referee, and you need the audience to assess whether it's a goal or not. And therefore, for us, we have 5 variables which defines economic transformation. These are outcome indicators. I want to reduce it a little bit to a simplistic term so that
Please
it's
help
clear.
me.
So, for example, we say diversification. Your economy must diversify.
Move from cocoa
Yeah, all
alone
these
and
things, yeah.
this guy
Yeah,
goes
and
somewhere
if you
else.
see in African countries, in terms of the economies, they're all primary export producers. 70% of all exports are in primary commodities. Okay, and the top 5 exports they're all primary commodities and constitute 70% of all exports in the economy. So you are vulnerable to the vicissitudes of world, prices. A slight, shock, in cocoa prices or oil and so on, immediately has a ripple effect on your economy, because those are the things that drive you. You're not diversifying. So you don't pack your eggs in one basket. You need to look at other products. You need to move up the value chain, add value.
Add value.
But this has to be intentional. You just don't say one district, one factory. You have to be very intentional on what public policies are and what fiscal tools, in other words, taxation and revenue tools that you use to affect that diversification. And then the second thing is that you want to be export competitive. Why is that important? It's important because if you're talking about your small and medium-sized firms, if they are all just producing at a low level and their products are not competitive, then you're not moving anywhere, because it would affect your exchange rate, it will affect inflation, it will affect so many things. And that also must be intentional. You need to say, I want to be export competitive, right? And you define what export competitiveness is. If you look at the Assets website, you see all these things there. And the third thing is productivity. We'll be coming to education. Productivity, one of the key variables in productivity is skills, education and skills. Do you have the workforce with the skills, capabilities to be able to increase outcome of production? Are they capable of upgrading technology? Is the government systems of science and research and so on, contributing to providing the technological innovation that is needed for SMEs to grow? But the most important thing, as we all talk about, is prospects, right? And in that variable, we say H, human well-being. And under human well-being, we are looking at key indicators that governments would have to focus on. For example, income disparity. How do you reduce income disparity? You have the LEAP program and all those sort of programs. But are they really addressing the issues of lifting all boats? Women's employment, women's education. Very, very critical for economic transformation. What is the percentage of women in the formal sector compared to men? What is the percentage of formal sector employment? Because by formal sector, you're talking about decent jobs. Social security, you're talking about health insurance, you're talking about paid leave, all those things that improve work-life balance and increases income so that households can be able to afford education and all that. So these are all the variables you look at. But these variables are what we should be holding governments accountable to. Is the economy diversified? Is the economy export competitive? Are we improving productivity? When you compare Africa, even Ghana, to the emerging economies of Asia and so on, the productivity level in Africa is 1/3 of those in Asia. And
1/3?
1/3. If you take agriculture, agricultural productivity is very, very low in Ghana. Even if you take, say for example, if you take oil palm. In Malaysia, you are getting about 22 tons per hectare. In Ghana, the best you can get is about 9 or 11. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how do you improve productivity? Productivity is the only way you can increase income. So if you're agitating for increasing income, if the productivity is not rising, where are you getting the money to be able to increase income? It's through productivity increases that you get that. So these are the things that we looked at when talking about economic transformation.
Let me tell you, because I'm on the streets, I walk on the streets. The thing here is this: if you ask any of my guys in my neighborhood that we sit around and talk, in their mind, if you say Ghana 2057 economic transformation, I kid you not, in their mind, the picture is Dubai. In their mind.
Yeah, that you want to be like Dubai.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
In their mind,
Yes.
that's what they're looking for. Like,
Yes.
okay, so we have this, we have that. We have, if I went back and they listened to the show, if I went back today and went to sit by our joint, and can I convince them that this vision, if it is implemented well, well enough, would make us a Dubai in 2057?
Maybe we could pass it, because now we are looking at how Dubai looks like. And I think just recently there was some heavy rain.
Some flooding there, yeah.
Yes. So, and as I was going through this, it's vision. It takes a while to achieve it. Sometimes you may not even achieve it.
Yeah,
as
but
we
it's a
read.
picture. Vision
Yeah.
is visual, so it's a picture.
Yes. So you visualize the thing, and then you put mechanisms in place to ensure that you get there. And it's collective. Okay? So, yes, Dr. Brown has given us some of the pointers, what other countries are doing, where they also scoring, and even the case of Ghana. In fact, as we speak now, a lot of people have challenges with the way things are going. It's almost like having to swallow or take the bitter pill with the hope that in future we will get better. And we all need to come around the table to do these discussions. Yes, we've set, and this is not just NDPC or the commission sitting somewhere to craft it. It has run through a number of processes, analytical work and consultative processes and all that. And so this is Ghanaian. All of us, we want it. So it actually where happiness of citizens, and then also leading to Ghana even playing a key role internationally.
Yeah, I saw that.
This is something that we all desire. We've been there, you know, the names are there for us all, to Kofi Annan, even Chambers and all that.
Yeah.
And sometimes even the accolades that we receive when we are out there, that Ghana is doing well democratically, but we need to do better and also move on that. And then, so from the vision,
the broad vision,
this is very consistent with the Constitution, because the Commission,
free, fair, prosperous, they are all catered for.
Yeah.
in its work, we also want to remain law-abiding, and so we are not doing anything outside what the Constitution wants us to do, but we add on. So we have a goal now. The overall goal is to improve the living standards of Ghanaians by attaining. And so here too we picture in the long term that we should be able to attain a middle income country status.
What are we now?
Now we're hovering, we use the economic measures like
So it's the lower middle.
We are lower middle,
yes.
but 2057 we should be upper middle.
Yes.
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
middle?
Upper
There's middle.
Yeah, there's middle.
It's
There's
all
upper
gauged
middle.
by the per capita GDP.
You know, but if I may just,
Please.
You made mention of Dubai, right? And Dubai about 30 years ago was a fishing village. Okay, they have, and then they discovered oil, and they have used oil to transform the economy, diversify. In fact, you don't even hear about Dubai's oil production.
No, it's more tourism.
But you're talking about tourism, you're talking about huge, what is it called, infrastructure development
IT,
and all
they are
that.
so heavy in that space
and
now.
that is what is creating a sustainable structure. It's intentional. They have diversified, they are export competitive, they have increased productivity by providing education and training to align with the growing nature of jobs. they are applying technology to the maximum.
Heavy.
Many of the institutions in the Western world, universities, Harvard, all those universities have, campuses in Dubai.
In Dubai, yeah.
And they attract the best intellectuals to be there, to engage with them on these issues. That is what I mean by intentional efforts. It has to be, when you say you're going to diversify, that is what you want to go. How do you do it? It would vary. In Ghana, it's cocoa, gold, agriculture, and so on. But even more important, now we have rare minerals.
Lithium just came into the scene.
Lithium. What are we doing strategically to add value to that in the country? Producing batteries, there are opportunities of that nature. Energy smart infrastructure, businesses, and so on. So the strategic direction now, you see, you are diversifying as you move into those areas and adding value. So there has been deliberate action in those areas. And you have to have key indicators to measure whether you are getting there. And this is where, if we are clear on the indicators and targets and goals, then we as NDPC has a framework, we have an accountability mechanism. We can then hold whatever government in place and say, this is what we all agreed to do. This is where we say you are doing, where you are. You haven't been able to achieve X and Y, which you claim you want to do. So then, we hold you accountable, and if you're not doing well, so we begin to deal with issues, real issues.
Not personalities,
yes,
not particulars, not
precisely.
symbols.
Yes, so that the election process is anchored on well-defined, knowledge-curated data. We're not interested in how many kilometers of road you've produced or how many ambulances you've produced. We want to see whether those roads are increasing agricultural productivity by linking all those areas.
Okay, now I get where you're coming from.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's not just the roads. You're looking at
you can't come and tell us the roads if it doesn't add
Precisely.
to productivity and all
that. All that.
Okay.
So you can't come and tell us that you've bought 100,000 ambulances when maternal mortality is dropped. Is increasing. Or tractors, as you said, and agricultural productivity is still low. So it's not the output, it is the outcome you want to measure. And if you do that, you will become Dubai.
As a matter of fact, if you went to buy those tractors and agricultural productivity is not increasing, and we are still 1/3 of what the West and others are doing, you've actually caused financial loss to us.
Yes. And in fact, you can begin to say that, can we produce the parts of these tractors in the country? You're not just buying tractors, you're not leasing and so on. Can we produce the parts here or in other countries like Burkina, Cote d'Ivoire and so on, so that we create a regional, economic block that is constantly working together to increase scale, to provide opportunities for people to move around. Those are the things you need to begin to look at. So if you're looking at Dubai, let's use Dubai as our yardstick. Okay, and as I said, even Singapore. Rwanda did the same thing.
Yeah.
Have you been to Rwanda these days? Massively developing.
It's all over.
Massively
shared. And
the infrastructure is massive. The government is aggressively focusing on productivity, manufacturing, textiles is there, and so on. So you need to look at those things. And when you're doing this, you have to be transparent in your procurement. Procurement is very, very important. Public procurement. The partnership with the private sector. We do not necessarily have to borrow money to build our roads. Private capital is sitting there waiting for good investment opportunities. If the framework for public-private partnership is defined and is transparent, private investors would be able to access financing to be able to finance those infrastructure. The government's role is to de-risk the financing by providing opportunities, for those things that the private sector wouldn't go into, sequestering the area, land, and all that. Yeah. Okay, but also knowing that infrastructure costs a lot of money. In terms of pricing of the public good, because you're talking about infrastructure as a public good, something that we all benefit from, roads. Okay. if a private company comes and is trying to build say Accra, Elubo Road, through Kumasi, through Cape Coast to Takoradi and so on, and it's going to cost X billion US dollars, they assess what it would mean in terms of the toll, that they would take. Now, it's now the government's role to say, listen, I want the tolls to be X, and I would subsidize that X by providing the resources. So that going from Accra to Elubo, maybe just in terms of the toll, is just, 10 or 20 Ghana cedis. But if it's only the private sector doing it, it may cost 300 Ghana cedis. So you subsidize that, but you're not the one building the road. See what I'm saying? So the procurement processes, the way you finance public investment has to change. You need to focus more on how you crowd in private sector to create the jobs as well as reduce the costs. We've been talking for several years now about mass transit.
Exactly.
And even there was a proposal that we're going to have
overhead
the rail system,
overhead,
and so on and so forth. What has happened? Because the private sector is sitting there and looking at opportunities. If the framework is transparent and would offer, returns to their investment.
Exactly, they would do it.
They would do it.
For them, it's business.
Yes. But then, as a public good, government must work to de-risk that financial intervention. And there are several ways you can do it. So it's very important.
So we come back.
Yes. So with having set that broad goal of making Ghanaians happy, improving the living standards and all that, we provided some preconditions. What will make this happen?
Great.
What it drivers of transformation? And of course, with our think tank partner, a lot of studies have been done. We'll just broadly run through some of the things that we need to have happening so that we can realize these things, so it will not just be a mirage. We need to achieve and sustain macroeconomic stability. Big words, what is it? The fundamentals of the economy. And economists, financial analysts will tell you what you need to do. Stick to it. Being financially prudent, your fiscal responsibility rules, sticking to it and ensuring that the economy is healthy. We don't need to compromise on that. Enabling attitudinal culture for sustainable social cohesion. What is it that Ghanaians need to do? Being time conscious, being prudent, respectful, and professional. You go to almost every organization, we have core values. How are we doing on those cores? We need to stick to them faithfully. Peace and security, we don't even need to mention. It's it's something that we need. We need a peaceful environment, secured terrain, so that we can collectively think through and implement our programs. Effective and efficient public service, and institutional strengthening. So we've underlined public service here because this is what government has control over, so that our human resource processes, procedures, and all that need to be sharp. But institutional strengthening, also giving credence to civil society organizations, private sector, and how they interface with the public sector. When I say public, it also includes the civil. So the ministries, departments, and agencies, the metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies. A lot of work there. And I know a lot of work has been done by ASSET and other partners. You go to the International Growth Center and all that. They've done a lot of work on how the assemblies can even mobilize revenue. Not just going to take, but providing the environment for private sector to thrive. And in our system, Ghana's system here, because of the informal nature of the economy, where a lot of businesses, you know, not sometimes even registered, but they are really in business. What is it that the public sector can provide to support their work, to enable the environment so that they can thrive and compete, not just within country or even the regional, but also globally? Do we have Ghanaian brands, business brands that are competing out there globally and making the name and bringing in the investments? We're also looking at human capital development for improved productivity. He touched on the case of the agriculture sector, but if you go to several other areas of our national life, productivity may be suffering. The industry, sometimes even services. We've talked about tourism severally, and it's one of the potentials that we have. But you go in there, what we are getting from the investment is also low, and we need to keep an eye on that. Science, technology, and innovation, these are drivers that you just need to build on them. Thanks, I think we're making some strides, but we need to ensure that they are contributing positively to impact on our productivity and also to grow us. Sustainable infrastructure development. Okay, your system, this multimedia processes that you are going through, if connectivity were not strong, you couldn't be reached out there.
It's true.
So investments in telecommunication, investments in technology, so that we could do it much, much, much easier and reach out to our audience and also the citizens. It helps. Through your processes, you get a lot of Ghanaians in country and even outside educated or informed so that they can all contribute. His favorite word, accountability mechanisms. And he's always pointing out that we need to put in mechanisms that will enforce implementation. Else it will just remain here. By the way, the National Development Planning Commission is an apex planning institution hanging out there at the national level. On the ground, you need the ministries, departments, and agencies. You need the metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies to be able to effect implementation. How do they coordinate their programs? As we've done this vision, the sectors and districts are supposed to prepare medium-term plans. And of course, the NDPC guides them. We work together. When you come to our sessions, very interactive, so that they craft development plans. That is where the action is. And per the planning process, we call it decentralized planning process. It is the plans that they prepare also for medium-term phases, 4-year cycles. And then every year, so on annual basis, then they will extract what they would want to do every year. Of course, it's also predetermined within the 4-year cycle, so you know what programs, what specific actions you are taking, so that you submit this, and it's interrogated. You submit this to the Ministry of Finance for annual budgeting processes, so that the investments or the funding that is required for you to execute the programs will be ceded to you. But all these processes defined, we just need to keep an eye, maybe an extra eye on these processes, so that you call on Ministry of Finance, even in NDPC itself. We also roll out our programs on an annual basis where we receive funding, budget to be able to execute. And it's not only government that finances these programs. The development partners are there, private sector, sometimes through corporate social responsibilities. So as they are listening to us, they all have a role. Even the individual citizen, whether they want to become philanthropics, where they want to support some processes, which they do anyway. So depending on where you reside or where you operate your business, you can call on the respective district assembly and say, okay, now the National Development Planning Commission, through the work that they are doing with ASSET, have put in some mechanisms. We want to see what it is that you want to do this year, even 2024, 2025. Let us have a sense of what needs to be done, and then we'll see how we can contribute as citizens, as private sector, even as development partners, especially the local ones, the think tanks and all that. We all have a role to play so that we can get the things that we have said we want to get in place. And we use that expression very, very carefully, together we build, maybe, and sustain, because we don't just want to build it and leave it. We want to ensure that it is sustainable and everybody has a role. The media, very, very important in this process, educating people and ensuring that we put the necessary, I don't want to use pressure, but accountability mechanisms.
So these things, Dr. Brown, these things that he's listed, enumerated beautifully, well, the one that touches me so much is the attitude. How do we practicalize this and ensure that, because from what he's saying, it's a prerequisite to we becoming like we achieving the. So if you pick that alone, it's a whole hurdle. What are the practical steps that we need to undertake to even handle attitude alone?
Behavioral change is one of the things that are very difficult to achieve. It has to deal with incentives, and you also have to start at the very beginning with the youth. I remember during our days in school, we had civic education and all that, which was being given to us. So citizenship, the patriotism and all that has to start from that level. But also at the leadership level, it has to be exemplified. Okay, so because I think that is what is important. And that's why the NCCE is there to provide this. Perhaps they need more resources because they are doing phenomenal work. But you need to see how this can be integrated, mainstream into curriculum, primary school, even from kindergarten and all that, for people to begin to think about these issues. But the point, one of the points in terms of the issues that Richard raised, we're talking about what is our biggest problem today? It's unemployment. Unemployment everywhere in the world, but mostly in the global south.
Yeah.
Unemployment is a major problem. And in Ghana, it is even very acute. Ghana, normally we say Ghana has some of the best policies you can ever think about, but implementation is the problem. So for example, we started with the National Service Program in the 70s. I don't want to reveal my age, but in the mid-70s, okay, with the National Service Program. At the time, it had a clear vision and objective, to inculcate a sense of citizenship and patriotism. So you are placed anywhere and you go and you do things in it, But if you look at the National Service Program today, which could be the forerunner to real employment, in other words, school-to-work transition, where, the graduates learn and begin to get a better understanding of what is happening in the real world. If you look at it today, one of the things that, and it's not just one government, but the employment policies are much more propaganda politics.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying. They are not anchored in sound industrial policy.
We've created 1,000 jobs.
Yes, and it's not sustainable.
We've trained 15,000 kaya.
Yes, yeah. Those are not going to lead anywhere. You need to work through the private sector to incentivize the private sector to be able to grow those jobs. Okay, is what I'm saying. And you can use your fiscal policy, in other words, your taxation policies, to promote and incentivize the private sector. So for example, today, if you are doing national service, I'm using this because I just want it to be that we need intentional policies that focus on specific outcome objectives, right? You want to create jobs. If you want to create jobs, and national service graduates coming out from from schools, the private sector is going to employ quite a bit of them. Now, if your policy is that if I, as a private sector, a business, you want me to employ inexperienced guy who has absolutely no capacity to do what I want him to do, but you want me to give him some training. But at the same time, you want me to pay for that and also pay taxes on that national service stipend that I give him. What incentive do I have? I don't have any incentive.
Yeah.
There's no incentive. But you could do it very easily. And in fact, it would have several implications to grow the small and medium-sized enterprises. By just telling them, listen, if you employ X number of students or whatever it is, you would get tax credit. The government is not going to give you money, but as you file your taxes and you demonstrate that you have used these people and so on, you get a tax credit, which will reduce your taxes and therefore increase your revenue, and you can even employ some of them eventually.
Exactly.
So you can begin to create the jobs that is needed, as opposed to a situation where you have NAPCO, or is it, I've forgotten the name, where you provide, you give them, each of them some money, to sort of go and start a business. Not everybody can be an entrepreneur. But those companies, individuals that have been able to set up business, means that they have the passion and the drive to do it. If you help them, they can create the jobs. And they are more aligned with the changing nature of jobs, the kind of skills that is needed. You can then, the industry, training institutions can begin to collaborate in ways where the labor market offers opportunities to sort of address these job challenges that you have, the unemployment challenges that you have. So I just wanted to use that as an example of an intentional policy that is grounded in industrial policy that is sustainable. It's very, very important.
Interesting. Okay, back to the vision.
Yes.
Now that we've done the prerequisites, what is next in that document?
Okay, so then we zoom into the pillars, what we call the development dimensions. Broadly speaking, we look at economic, social, infrastructure, which is also environment, the natural and built environment, and we're also looking at governance. So these traditionally would have been the 4 blocks: your economic, social, environment, and then the governance. But we added the what we call the emergency preparedness, because it's become something that we need to address regionally, globally, and all that. Within the sub-region, there are all these ramifications of security issues that, as a nation, we need to be prepared, safeguard our integrity, but also, be prepared to address any influx that will come our way. The COVID-related one, medical or health-related ones also set in motion. But the point I would make here is that whether it is economic, social, environment, and all that, there are institutions that are set up to address, or whose mandate relate to these. So let's begin with the economic ones.
Let's do.
So how you raise revenue is one, because government essentially needs to mobilize resources and spend same on our behalf, collective behalf. So the institutions that come to mind, maybe just some few. Ministry of Finance. GRA finds itself under Ministry of Finance. So revenue agency that mobilize all the resources, whichever way, whether they are doing it at the national level, at the district level, or whatever, they work together to ensure that something comes into the national kitty. Is it enough to implement the programs that we want to? If it is not enough, how do we get extra or beef it up to be able to do it? And then the expenditure. So Ministry of Finance working through GRA and all the revenue gathering institutions working closely with the central bank, also with respect to our monetary policy, how to ensure stability in prices and all that. The Ghana Statistical Service is also there. Finance will set the target. Maybe you want to grow this much per the exigencies of the time. It is Ghana Statistical Service that will be doing the measurement or the monitoring to see whether our growth rate is what we said we will.
They're doing a good job. I mean, Ghana Statistical, they're doing a solid job.
So with all the research that comes around, pointing us to where the growth is coming from, so that if we need to do any investment, then we can engineer it there. So one, or let me say just some few objectives that we set within the economic sector broadly to attain the upper middle income status. That is anything above $8,000, $8,500. That is the per capita. So for instance, you look at all the revenues mobilized and then you share it
among all of us,
including everyone Ghanaian. So we put it there, and then you see where it's scoring. Currently, we're hovering around 2003 thereabout, but we want to get to 8,500 by that time. It could be more, but we need to ensure that it doesn't fall below, else we would have missed our target. We also want to have an economy that is primarily export driven, for good reasons. Adding value, because you just can't continue to export the raw commodities. Nobody will mind you these days. So add value so that as you do that, you also create employment and the opportunities around it, along the value chain. So if it is agri, whether it's the extractive sector with all the minerals that we are, if we added value, we will get more from it. And it has direct impact on the monetary and the exchange rate issues that sometimes keeps dribbling us. We need to address that. And also to have a stable exchange rate. The CD in comparison with other international trading currencies. These, we think, we should be able to address. On the social front.
Okay.
Very, very important. In fact, the commission sometimes, the social, the economic, but the constitution did a very good job by saying that the two should be looked at together. But if they were children, which one is the youngest?
It's true.
Okay, but very, very important, because that has to do with the human resources that we have, whether it's education, whether it is the health, and the opportunities around it. Getting jobs to do, good jobs, stable, sustainable, and decent jobs these days. If you look at the principles around in the ILO conventions and all that.
Child labor issues.
Right. So in there, what is it that we want? That out of every 5 children, we should have 3 of them to be able to transition to tertiary education. Not just to have tertiary education, but we know the impact that could.
Dr. Brown, is that a fair thing? Out of 5, only 3?
Okay, that gives
I think. Well, I mean, if you look at what exists globally, there's no country where out of 5 of them.
Of course.
So I think the ambition.
It's fine. 3 is fine.
Is reasonably ambitious. I mean, in terms of 3 out of 5 for tertiary, but it doesn't mean that all the 5 must have secondary education as a minimum.
But so
secondary education.
Is that stated in there somewhere?
Oh yes, it's these are. We've just put in the highlights for you, but it's in fact the literacy is even very, very fundamental. We're looking at scoring about 95% of the population being literate.
What are we now? Where are we now? 70 something?
I don't have the specific score now, but it's
95. It's doable.
But the ambition is that if you look at it, secondary education is the platform from which people move into jobs.
Exactly.
So if you can have 100% of your population
at secondary,
at that age, the age of 17, 18, having secondary education, then it's really a driver of economic transformation, because then they can learn further. They would have the capacity to even learn on their own, access information, and be able to make informed judgment. So I think that is very, very important, and what the policy is doing in terms of the plan, having that.
So that is still on the education.
Yeah, so I was right.
Even
Literacy is 69.8, so I was right with the 70.
Yes.
So we need to
Move it to 95.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the skills development. So looking at the TVET, that's the technical vocational education. We need skills development so that they can address the needs of the industry. We set up what we call the one district, one factory, of course, to bring the private sector to take lead, set up industries and be able to not only produce but also add value that will compete effectively on the regional and global markets, thanks to the opportunities offered by AFTA. But how are they doing? And I'll come to how we also assess progress as of the framework that we use to. So, but just to put a spotlight that these areas are very important for us. If for nothing at all, we need to be able to achieve very good scores. Now, the almighty poverty. That extreme poverty should be eliminated completely. And the analysis will give you the score, what the extreme poverty is, and how it can be, so that we stick to it. All the agencies that are mandated to work within that space to be able to discharge their responsibility. But health, equally important. At birth, you should be able to predict how long a person will be able to live, life expectancy. And here too, that the life expectancy of Ghanaian will increase to 75 years.
By 20...
This is by 2057. Currently, we are doing
75 years.
Yeah. Okay. Currently, we're doing around 60. It's around male-female dynamics.
Upper 50s.
Yeah.
That's low.
Very low.
So we need to enhance on that. Now we go to the environment. And some of these things, as soon as you mention, everybody has an example of our current situation. The menace that we are faced with. Resources in the belly of the ground, the earth, and our haste to extract them, but without recourse to environmental prudence and
Galamsey.
You have said it.
Galamsey.
The Galamsey. And I think for this week, it's been in the news. Last week, I also traveled along the Kumasi stretch, and when I saw it just along the Konongo community, the market, you look on the right side and it's all over there. Now we are getting some indication that whether they are filling the place or there's some Galamsey work. The analytical work needs to be done so that as Ghanaians we know what is happening. But it's out there. We don't seem to have had that discipline to do justice to that, the extraction of.
So how is it worded? For some reason I'm interested. How is it worded? And the environment, how is it worded?
So there are specific expectations in there. I just wanted to bring.
I'm interested now to know how the weddings go.
I'll come to that. But we're also looking at the energy transition issues, the need for clean fuel. There's this debate out there. If you want to extract the oil and all that, how do you do it? Use of combustion and its impact on the environment, and that gradual shift, but also making investments into clean energy, energy efficiency issues. So we said there will be 100% access to clean fuels and technology. So you need to build that capacity to be able to assess that. Ghana will become a West African transportation hub. So now we're looking at the transportation issue, because if it is not also efficient, then it also contributes to the pollution and all that, staying in traffic for long periods and all that. And also if the roads are not properly done and they are not in good condition, it also impacts on the transportation sector. That's speaking. Housing, also very, very important. The deficit is still high. Now looking at the numbers, we want to reduce it from the current 1.8 million to just about 300,000 just to...
By 2057.
Yeah. So all these indications have been provided in the full details in the document, but we just, for highlights, just mention them so that we will keep an eye.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. It's just about 20 minutes to the top of the hour thereabout. That means that we have just about 15 minutes to wrap up this conversation. Vision 2057, Ghana's course for a brighter future. And it's a bit of an interesting conversation because there's so much I wanted to ask, but I think today should be just day one of this discussion because there is no way, absolutely no way we could go into it. We have in the studio Dr. Edward Brown, who is a Senior Director, Research, Policy and Programs at Africa Center for Economic Transformation. And then also Richard Twinibo-Akudia is the Director, Research and Innovation Division at the National Development Planning Commission. We're talking Ghana. You know, over this week I've been disturbing everybody with Vision 2057. The document is available. Going forward from next week, that will become the only thing I'll do on the show. We just talk. We'll talk only about 2057. And one of the discussions we had earlier was about coordination, and we were talking about clean energy. And I'm just thinking that, okay, so you have lithium, which could, you spoke about batteries. So it looks like everything we need to make this a reality
is here.
Is here. So
and if we look at the broader regional dimension to have scale, because I don't think any country in Africa today can transform in isolation. You know, so as we develop our plans and strategies, we also need to look at the regional markets and how we can scale up. You know, for example, bauxite, you have Guinea, large quantities of bauxite, manganese, and all that. But we are not coordinating these things in order to, you know, get the synergies and the scale that we need to become global players. And I think that is very, 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 very important. You know, and the point here is been making about, you raised the issue about I forgot it now. Of the Galamsey issue. You see, it's not just, I mean, the Galamsey is typically in Ghana, but you see that in Cote d'Ivoire, they are not, this is not happening because they have real policies that enforces those things. But perhaps Ghana has an opportunity to address this sustainability issue and the challenges of Galamsey, which has serious repercussions for our economy. Cocoa, you know, a lot of cocoa that was sent abroad some time ago were returned because they have mercury and cyanide.
Contaminated.
Yes, and it's also into. But we have some of the largest carbon sink, in other words, the forest.
Exactly.
In Ghana. And globally, there's an ongoing conversation around debt to nature swap. In other words, countries with
That's
debt.
That's a good discussion.
Yes, countries with debt can
forgive my debt so that I don't cut the forest.
Yes, precisely. And that the debt, the payment that you would have been making to service the debt, you can then use that money to support conservation, to incentivize shift from Galamsey to much more productive and green economy. And, you know, so that at least you can begin to recover your riverbeds that have been heavily polluted, have implications for farming, you know, and you may be surprised.
And even for health.
Many of the gari and others that you take, you know, the cassava, which is being produced there, are contaminated. And we haven't done enough work to see what the implications are for our health. But we know that a lot of problems with kidney are around those areas. So the implications are massive.
DJ Pete Wade and Victor Ado should be worried because those of you eating a lot of gari and beans, your cassava could be contaminated.
and in fact, there's the link to governance also on that.
I was going to come to that about governance because with all of these beautiful plans, and when we use Rwanda, that Rwanda is doing well, is our democracy as we're practicing it now, is it going to support Vision 2057 to send us there? Because someone had said in a forum I was in like just last week that our democracy is to win election, not to develop the country. That's scary. Yeah. does the democratic thing we're doing now, is it supportive of this?
Yeah, because we in the governance session we've also agreed on proposals to ensure popular participation, and that cuts across.
Okay.
So when in more recent times conversation about being citizen and not just spectators, so that people will not sit down. I think it didn't take long for the Konongo people to come out saying that no, what is happening, we can't accept it. And the media is doing well in bringing it up. Perhaps the next level is for the agents of government, those charged with the responsibility to ensure that if there's something going wrong, it doesn't fester, it doesn't perpetuate. So participation of the community, citizens across should be very, very important.
So multi-party democracy is not our problem.
Well,
it is the checks and balances we are not
we need
absolutely,
to top it up
absolutely. And I don't think you can leave the accountability to the government alone. Yeah. In fact, the citizens must hold the government accountable. And that is why the accountability mechanisms under the compact is going to be very, very important. Because if we have set up a compact on these issues, say sustainability, and we're talking about what we want to see, then you need a much more formalized system. I would call it deliberative democracy, where you ensure that the citizens, the groups, the youth, the other stakeholders and so on, are formally integrated into a system of engagement that deals with those big issues. Like Galam said, how do we deal with it? What are the issues? You don't leave it only to government policy, but you also need to hear from the citizens, and that those recommendations and actions are taken on, and we hold government accountable. And this is where the compact becomes a powerful tool to support the NDPC vision in making it happen.
So there are some, if I can just, that 4 out of 5 Ghanaians will be happy with public services.
Oh wow, that's my field. I'm interested in customer service. I'm like biased about customer service.
And you see the spotlight that we've placed on the institutions of the state, whether civil or public.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5.
That's
high.
Easy to measure.
Yes. Yeah. So we should be able to say that, oh, this institution is the one responsible for this. What are they doing? How come we are having challenges with this? And then the institutions will begin to set up.
Yeah, but how you do that is the challenge.
Yes, there's another angle. So it's like we've tried together to plug all the holes. And as we are making this information public, then everybody will now feel confident that, oh, now I can also do it. Look at the other one. It says 4 out of 5 Ghanaians will have confidence in law enforcement agencies. So talk of the police. Okay? And any other institution on the line to ensure that we stick to the law. Anything outside what is agreed and printed in law, we shouldn't. And anybody should be able to bring this up. And I'm sure once together we start doing this. And then the last, maybe on governance. Corruption will be brought down to negligible levels. We didn't want to say 0 or 1 or 2. Negligible means corruption. So we don't want to have it at all, because the sanction, he talks about the incentives, but building the incentives for being corrupt should be so punitive that nobody would want to dare. And I think it's happening elsewhere. And so we can do it also. Yeah,
but you see, again,
we need to discuss the compact.
I agree 1000% with all this. And I keep on saying the devil is in the implementation. We need to be deliberate. Yeah. Who is going to hold them accountable? Individuals are not going to hold themselves accountable. You have to force them to be accountable, right? Yeah. Because they may have self-interest, which may not be aligned with the general interest. So it is important that in this process, we define those institutions, the watchdogs, those structures that will, on a very regular basis, continue to monitor and ensure that these things are being done. And whether or not we are moving the needle gradually towards the ultimate objective. Yeah. If you're saying 4 out of 5, what is it called, institutions,
4 out of 5 Ghanaians should be happy.
Should be happy.
Yes,
that is
the law
that
is also being
order.
enforced and all that.
Yeah, and in fact, if you look at what Afrobarometer used to do in terms of assessing these things, the question is that when these results come out, what happens? Do you hold them accountable? How do you hold them accountable? These are the core issues that we need to begin to look at. Because you could have the data, and the data is always there. Yeah. But then when it comes to whether the government or the institution are responsive and changing their behavior, is there any kind of accountability to ensure that they do that? Yeah. What sort of mechanisms are in place? How do you empower the citizens to be much more involved and to hold government accountable to those issues? Yeah. And I think that's where the challenge is.
And the details, as we keep saying, are in the document. Maybe the first thing is to ensure that
today we've gone over the broad things.
Just to do
we've not gone into it because
and maybe the last bit, which on the emergency preparedness. In fact, we touch on all aspects of emergency planning.
Yes, we have 3 minutes to go.
Yes,
let's touch on emergency
that's when
preparedness.
We say that Ghana will have a robust early warning and response system to drought. But this week I'm hearing that
the north. Yes.
Dry spells, floods, and other related disasters. Safe havens will be provided in all regions to protect citizens. And then cyber threats, will be minimized or reduced, to also negligible. Or let me say, cyber threats will be minimized to reduce economic losses and maintain the reputation of persons and businesses. And even as a country, if it should happen, it should be elsewhere, not from Ghana or by Ghanaians.
Early warning signs of not even the drought, but floods.
And maybe just to wind up for you, so the Planning Commission has a monitoring and evaluation process, in fact, a broader framework, so that as we make all these proposals, some key indicators of interest have been agreed upon. There are a number of them that are being monitored and also evaluated, but some key ones have been agreed and assembled in the document, so that the institutions that are responsible for it, as they do their annual progress reports, which is done every year, they also do the quarterly reports. Sectors, districts, you can get these documents from them, and it's also placed on the website. NDPC receives some of them and we share. But we do the national one at the end of the year. By June of the successive year, we would have completed the preceding year, so that we see where we are in terms of the progress made across these indicators of interest that we've selected. This report goes to Parliament. And to Parliament for good reason. That is the representation of citizens or the Ghanaian, so that it is debated, it is discussed, and then any recommendations, or even if there should be sanctions if you are not doing things right, then it can be. But we also feel that the private sector, citizens out there, civil society, institutions, think tanks, and all that should take this document and highlight the achievements, whether positive or negative. Maybe we should do both and ensure that where we are doing things well and better, it is highlighted. But where we are also not doing well, we need to emphasize, so that we can get all the corrections and the remedies in place and be able to make progress. The document is not for NDPC. It is for Ghanaians.
All right, so 5 minutes. Okay. Time is up. It's been an interesting conversation. For the first time, we've done a 2-hour conversation that I really didn't realize that the time was really running that fast. Vision 2057, Ghana's course for a brighter future. Richard Trinibu-Akodia, you just said from, is the Director, Research and Innovation Division, National Development Planning Commission. Dr. Edward Brown is with the African Center for Economic Transformation. He's the Senior Director, Research, Policy and Programs. Where do we get Vision 2057 document?
Okay, so we have it, the soft copy online on our website, www.ndpc.gov.gh.
Okay.
But of course, not everybody would be able to access it there. So we're making conscious effort. We've already printed copies, hard copies. I brought copies here that I will give to you.
Fantastic. Because from today, that's our morning show. I mean, it will be that. Dr. Edward Brown, last words before.
I just want to say that there will also be dissemination. So this is.
Oh, wow. This is for ZFM.
Yes.
It will be in the studio.
I'll bring more copies.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Dr. Edward Brown has the last word before the news is coming up. So
I think it's been a very insightful conversation. The Vision 2057 is one which I strongly believe that if the mechanisms that are being put in place, are finalized, it would be a difference from what has happened in the past. We need to continue with policy continuity, implementation of existing programs. We add value to that, and over time, we would get to Dubai.
We'll get to Dubai 2057. Thank you very much, listeners and viewers. It's been an exciting week. As always, Z in the Morning is wrapping up for the week. But before we do, people, pray like it only depends on God. But like we say, go work also like it only depends on you. We'll do this again next week. Have a good one and enjoy the weekend.